Proposition 8, what's it all about? Well, Proposition 8's on the ballot in the state of California this coming November. It's an effort to define what is marriage, and it defines it as a relationship between a man and a woman. As we're all aware, earlier this year, the California Supreme Court redefined marriage in California by saying marriage included a relationship between two people of the same sex. All right. If Prop 8 is passed, it will attempt to amend the Constitution of California and say, no, that isn't right. Supreme Court got it wrong. Marriage is only between a man and a woman. That has led to a number of you who have emailed us and said, but what about the U.S. Constitution? What is that all about? Doesn't that protect certain rights? Well, the United States Constitution basically is a document that deals with the relationship between you and government. It doesn't define other rights. On the other side of the coin, though, there were certain rights that were assumed to exist by the people who wrote the U.S. Constitution. Among them, right to marry, right to bear children, right to live, obviously. A number of justices, when they have examined issues, have said that these intrinsic rights are recognized by the U.S. Constitution, even though you won't find them defined in the Constitution. As Justice Douglas said some time ago, they're found in the penumbras of the Constitution. What does that mean? That means in the light shadows of the Constitution. But the justices of the Supreme Court see them there because they existed when the Constitution was written and were assumed to exist by the people who wrote the Constitution. Okay, if Prop 8 is passed in California, it goes up to the U.S. Supreme Court, not the California Supreme Court, goes up to the U.S. Supreme Court. U.S. Supreme Court can look at this and do a number of things. First of all, they may approach it under what's referred to as the doctrine of federalism. What does that mean? That means that, hey, states can do things the way they want to do things. Remember, we're 50 states which are united by the U.S. Constitution. But we are 50 separate states that can approach things differently, and historically marriage has always been left to each and individual state as to what they want to do. I think we all know getting a divorce in Nevada is a whole different ballgame than getting a divorce in New York. But if the U.S. Supreme Court looks at this, it can do several things. And one of the things it can do is it can say that marriage has traditionally been something that takes place between a man and a woman, and therefore that is what it is, because that was what it was thought to be at the time that the writers of the Constitution wrote the Constitution. The other thing they can do, which under federalism, they could say, no, that's not the case. We're going to let each individual state decide what it wants to do, because that historically is what we have done. The other thing it could do is it could look at it and say, hey, wait a second. Even though the Constitution was written at a time when the only way marriage existed was between a man and a woman, the Constitution is a living, breathing document. It applies to situations today in the 21st century that were never envisioned when the Constitution was written. Therefore, we have to interpret it in terms of what was really intended within its very bones by the people who wrote it, and one of the things was this true freedom and recognizing what those freedoms were. And the U.S. Supreme Court could come away and find that intrinsic in the Constitution is the right to marriage between two people of the same sex. All right, that's where we're going. Possibly, depending upon what happens under Proposition 8 and whether it passes in November or not. But as you can see, there is no black and white answer on this because of the history that we've had under the U.S. Constitution and the way in which states individually have a right to go their own way. We bring you this video blog so you can a little better understand what's going on, what your rights are, and how they are protected here in the good old U.S. of A. I'm David Allen.